Governor Urjit Patel completes 2 years in office, and we have been speaking with a panel of experts to check out what they have made of what has been a fairly tough 2 years in office. Started with demonetization, and then you had setting up of the Monetary Policy Committee for the first time in India's history, and then cleaning up a banking system which had accumulated almost 10 trillion rupees of bad loans over the past several years, and insolvency code that had just been put in, and therefore that was being tested. And now, as he completes 2 years, challenges from the global currency markets as well. Joining me now to give his opinion on how Governor Patel has navigated through all these troubled waters is Ratin Roy, the Director of the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, also part-time member, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Dr. Roy, thank you very much for joining me. Well, first up, monetary policy. Do you think fairly successful in establishing the institution and keeping to the given inflation target? How would you rate his performance?
I think as the governor's job, the institution of the Monetary Policy Committee depends on a number of things other than the governor. So we have to examine whether the governor's role in the development of that committee has been, how good that has been. I think it's been very good in 3 ways. One, the Monetary Policy Committee now is established as an institutional process where every time a Monetary Policy Committee report comes out, there's a discussion not just about why interest rates are kept on hold or not, but also about the overall inflation credit situation in the country. Two, the governor has reasonably successfully managed to make sure that the opinions expressed by the Monetary Policy Committee are largely consensual and demonstrably free, and that's very important in India, from external influence. That's a difficult job in India, much more difficult than other places. Third, the governor himself, in his comments, has shown exemplary professional and technical leadership in making the case for his views within the committee on the direction which the policy instruments at his disposal should take to be able to control inflation and manage credit. So I think that's the best one could expect from any governor over the last 2 years.
Oh, absolutely. And considering that in any case, this committee itself was the brainchild of the Urjit Patel report on inflation targeting. Dr. Roy, can there be a charge that in the process of taking inflation targeting as the main task of the Reserve Bank, probably less attention was paid to the current account deficit, and the trade deficit has snaked up, threatening to become a slightly ugly current account deficit? Would that be a charge against the RBI and the governor?
I don't think so. I do not see the RBI as the guardian of India's structural balance of payments crisis, right? Okay. The Reserve Bank of India is the central bank, and its job is to manage the consequences of a structural RBI given the overall policy parameters which are set by the Government of India. And the overall policy parameters that are set by the Government of India are that we will have a managed capital account, and that the RBI will use its resources at its disposal, it's basically its stock of reserves, to monitor the markets and make sure that as the exchange rate finds its level, whatever that might be, based on supply and demand for currency, that results in an orderly and predictable movement in the exchange rate. Now, it stands to reason that in a country which has structurally imports more than it exports, the price of the rupee will depreciate. So the job of the RBI is to make sure that that depreciation is orderly. And on that count, I think the RBI has done a pretty good job. Depreciations have, the worst thing that can happen if you're expecting the rupee to depreciate is for it to appreciate, right? Yeah. And there's been only one episode when that has happened, and that was quickly curbed. So I think in terms of managing the rupee's trajectory in an orderly fashion and keeping volatility minimal and making sure that we do not have shorting of the sort we saw in the Subbarao years, this governor has done an excellent job.
Okay, fine. Maybe some more challenges lie ahead. We are still in the midst of a global economy that's challenging emerging market currencies. So this will, of course, be a challenge that will have to be faced in the 3rd year in office as well. But the banking NPAs, how would you rate the way in which the Reserve Bank under Dr. Patel has taken that on?
Well, the division of labor seems to me that the government of India makes policy on how to handle the NPAs and how to therefore restructure the banks, obviously speaking with the RBI. And the RBI manages the ground rules under which NPAs are found and how banks should deal with the mechanics of NPAs once they are identified. And there I think the Reserve Bank has been fairly clear on what the ground rules are for NPAs to be identified and what banks must do once they're identified in terms of, sort of cushioning these with capital cover, etc. Because that is the division of labor. It is not, in my judgment, the case in India that the central bank, as the banking supervisor and regulator, makes policy on how to deal with the structural problem of bank NPAs. It might act as an advisor to government, but that call lies with the Ministry of Finance. And that is the institution you need to judge, if one were to judge how well or badly bank NPA has been dealt with, but that's not the subject of this conversation. So in that case, I think the RBI has done its job. The job assigned to it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of opposition when a circular was issued in February, which tightened the recognition considerably. I mean, recognition of NPA was still, or classification was still 90 days, but you had to report on day one of the default, and immediately bankers had to get together and restructure the rate of upgrading a restructured loan, or the bar was set very high. So people were a little taken aback by the ferocity of those rules. On hindsight, the banking system appears to have adjusted to it, although it has belched out a lot of NPLs. How would you say, I mean, the RBI has handled the February 12th circular? Are you in agreement with the main points of that circular?
You answered the question. I think the governor and the RBI have more expertise than I do on, number of days and that sort of thing. But if the circular worked, then it worked, and it did. We were in a situation where even 3 years ago, we had NPAs that existed in ample measure, and we had no idea what these were. Governor Rajan put into place a mechanism for identifying them, and unfortunately, the problem did not stabilize. Right?
Yes.
Therefore, it became essential to ensure, particularly after certain spectacular defaults and people fleeing the country and that sort of thing, that there was concrete demonstrable action taken to assure public confidence when NPAs were found. The screams that came from Bombay were possibly that these were too harsh and these would somehow damage the banking system, but that has not happened. And if you're talking about these restricting or inhibiting people from lending, yes. When your banking system is riddled with bad assets, lending will be curtailed.
Okay. Yeah, that point is taken. But well, one of the criticisms would be that you have lined up too many cases too soon in front of the NCLT.
Well, if there are cases that have to be put to the NCA, and if the problem is of the magnitude that people consensually seem to think is large, then there will be a large number of cases towards the NCA. I don't understand too many.
Okay.
One can't ration these things. One has to take them in the magnitude that they occur.
Okay. Well, no, it's just that then the waiting time gets large, and even the first batch of 12 cases, only 2 have been completely resolved and the checks have been paid out. So, one of the complaints against the circular was that while NCLT is an excellent institution, already the waiting line is big, and the February circular is pushing more. Anyway, I guess at the moment, that's the only way it can be resolved.
Well, then you need to ramp up the NCLT.
Yes.
That's hardly the governor's fault. No. His job is to bring these issues to the attention of the NCLT, which is what he has done. He cannot then be blamed for the fact that the machinery to deal with such cases is not adequate to the task. That's a collective responsibility. We all have to work to making sure it ramps up.
Okay. No, that's exactly the point Behram Vakil was making before you joined us in this chat. Dr. Roy, what would you say are the future challenges in the third year?
Oh, that's for the governor to decide. Thank God I'm not the governor.
No, but what are the very patent challenges in front of the central bank?
Well, the central bank has the challenge that we have to continue to watch the volatility of the exchange rate very, very carefully. Given instructions from government regarding where we would like to see the rupee go, and those instructions, no doubt, I'm sure, will take into account the indubitable fact that economics demands that the rupee must appreciate. The central bank's challenge will continue to be to manage that depreciation, I beg your pardon, depreciate, in an orderly way.
Yeah.
The second would be to make sure that the monetary policy remains reasonably on target, flexibly on target, in a way that does not inhibit growth unless it actually means that the parameters of the inflation target are broken. To improve the quality and functioning of the Monetary Policy Committee further, so that its pronouncements become rather more, how do I put it, coherent than I believe has been the case, and I've written about this in public, it's no secret. And fourth, to examine the question of the RBI's fiscal obligations to the government, and there, you didn't ask me that question. I think that a more relaxed view ought to be taken, or a less parochial view, if I can stick my neck out, could be taken by the RBI with respect to both the dividend it pays the government of India and the reserves that it holds for a banking crisis. But then that's just me.
Yeah, but the discussion of the reserves will perhaps take another half hour, and I'm running out of time on the show. Let me just ask you this. Do you think it will become more tough because the government is going into polls, and therefore they may find the third year, Urjit Patel may find it even more taxing because the government will want more money?
No, I am absolutely confident that this government will not deviate from the path of fiscal rectitude because it's an election year. For the very simple reason, I think everyone in government understands that there's very little payback to be gained at this stage of proceedings from expanding government spending. What government has committed to spend, it will spend, and if the budgetary numbers are right, that will not result in a drop in fiscal rectitude. So the RBI, I think, have no fears on that score, and I'm sure Governor Patel doesn't. Oh,
right. Oh, that's good to hear. I'm sure Dr. Patel himself will be very glad to hear of your assessment. And since you're sitting in Delhi, you're more likely to know the correct view of what the government is thinking. Would you want to grade the governor? How much would you give him for the 2 years?
I would not presume to grade the governor. He's both a senior economist and a friend. But I would say he's done a job that I find most satisfactory.
Well, actually, the previous two speakers also thought that they shouldn't be given this onerous job. But thank you very much, Ratin Roy, for joining us and taking us through how you see the governor's performance on several issues like the Monetary Policy Committee, the management of the external account and the banking system. I'm now joined by another veteran watcher of the Indian financial sector. In fact, he was, almost the penumbra, the core of the Indian financial sector. Hemendra Kothari, the chairman of DSP, BlackRock Investment Managers, joins us. Of course, now there has been a change in the name with a split coming in. Mr. Kothari, thank you very much for joining us all the way from the United States. It was very important for us to get your view. I assume you know Urjit Patel personally as well. How would you rate 2 years of Urjit Patel as central bank governor, RBI governor?
I think Urjit has done pretty well in this kind of uncertainties which are going and also in local domestic financial sector and various banking reforms. He came, demonetization took place, banking bankruptcy code, with various things which are going in, particularly in foreign exchange. What we are seeing in emerging market, Argentina, Turkey, and other countries going through the problems. And within that, I think India looks, emerging market actually stands out with our growth. At the same time, I would say rupee dollar, which he has fully managed with interest rate also at the same time. I think there is no panicky which has been created in India. So that is a very important aspect of the whole. He focused on macro aspect, and I think he's giving his view that how we look at the macro so that various other aspects can be controlled. So I think he has, in a short time, in 2 years' time, he faced a lot of problems and like particularly the bankruptcy side and the bank problems, and which he's been handling it very well actually, and very calmly and firmly.
No, actually, that was going to be my next and last question because we're running out of time. He was seen as taking a very tough stance on the NPA problem. Do you think we are over the hump, and how would you rate the way he handled it?
I think he has handled it very firmly, very calmly, and I think he doesn't. He expresses view, but at the same time is very calmly managing it. So I think I would give him a good score. I won't say what percentage and all that, but I think we did after particularly Mr. Raghuraman, who Dr. Raghuraman was very well-known economist globally, and Urjit coming in over there was many people get a surprise to many people, but he has done quite well. I think we have to say that in a tough time, he is doing well.
Oh, absolutely.
And that creates a confidence to a lot of investor time.
Yes.
Investors are having a lot of confidence on that.
Okay, and there you are in the United States, perhaps talking to investors. So the certificate comes from someone who is very close to investors and is saying that he has won the confidence of foreign investors. Thank you very much, Hemendra Kothari, for joining us. We have completely run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on this special show on Governor Urjit Patel completing 2 years in office.